new today?
I think Chris has got. I looked at him. He's over here writing notes and stuff. I said, "Do you have anything today?" He goes, "Oh, I got a lot."
Oh, well then,
So
Chris.
you just want to start with it?
We'll just go right to Chris.
Sure. Well, we're in Purim.
Purim.
So Purim begins tonight, sundown, and history repeats itself. And so we can look at the things that are going on in the world. The same thing that was going on at the particular time of Esther is going on in Russia, Ukraine right now. So we can, if we read this story, we'll understand truly what's going on, why it's going on, and what's going on behind the scenes. Okay. So God's the same yesterday, today, forever. He changes not. His word is alive. It's sharper than any two-edged sword, and He is showing us things that are going to happen through His word, because His word's alive. Right. And so we've learned that all throughout doing the parshas. We've learned that all throughout everything we've been doing since we started doing the parshas, when Trump said it'd be 15 days to slow the spread. And so now the reading this week specifically is the book of Esther, the 10 chapters of Esther. And what's really interesting is let's just read a couple things very quickly, just to kind of set the stage for where we are here. In Esther's first one, it tells us that King Xerxes is Xerxes is how it's in our English Bible, but what it is in the Hebrew Bible is Varashi is his name, and it says Varash is his name, King Varash, and we shorten that in our Bible to Xerxes, because that's much easier to say than Varash.
Yeah, okay.
So I've heard that other name before.
So that's what it is. That's what his actual name is, according to it's in this Bible, and in the if you go look in the Amplified, it actually makes reference to his name being that, and then we're calling it this for short. And so he reigned over 127 provinces. So at this particular point in time, this is the largest nation in the world. Okay,
right.
It's the biggest nation up to this point there has ever been. It's 127 provinces stretching from India to Ethiopia. So this is a massive land mass going on here. And he ruled from his throne, from his fortress of Susa, and in the third year of his reign. So for 3 years, he's run this for 3 years. Now he's trying to figure out, how in the world am I going to keep control over 127 provinces that stretch larger than any? I mean, it would take a year to get from one end to the other end of it. I mean, for a horse, camel, whatever you're riding at the time, it would take a very long time to get from point A to point B. So what does he do? He throws a 180-day party with all the nobles from all the different lands. And so we got 180, so half a year he's partying every day for half a year, 180 days. And so obviously this is a very rich, a very wealthy nation, very wealthy king to have parties for 180 days for all the nobility of all the lands.
I mean, I can't imagine that.
Yeah, and it goes into all the pomp, and it says a tremendous display of wealth and his empire and the pomp and spectacle of his majesty. And it was all over the king gave a banquet from the greatest to the least in his fortress of Susa, and it lasted 7 days and held in the courtyard of Palace Garden. So he had 180 days. The last 7 days is what we're going to focus on when our story begins. So we get the backstory that this is going on. He has this beautiful thing going on, and he actually made a rule: there's no limit to the amount anyone can drink. So you just imagine what's going on here. If there's no limit to what can drink, and everyone has got a different gold-colored goblet with great value, and there's no place in. And then he asked for his queen Vashti to come out and be put on display. Now, a lot of people speculate that he was so drunk that he did this, but if he's trying to show his great wealth and great power, now he's trying to show them that he has a woman of equal wealth and power that is going to help him in the ruling and reigning of the area. And he desires to parade her around and show her off to all the nobles. Go, look, this is your queen. He's trying to make a statement here. Yeah. Okay. And so a lot of people write it off that he was just drunk and crazy to try to show his wife off or whatever, different things. But he's actually trying to do something. How we're ending this big 180-day party. How am I going to cap this off? How am I going to make this be a lasting memory for everyone? I want to bring my wife in, my queen, and I'm going to show her off, because she is the queen of all of this, and I'm going to elevate her and just show everyone how great I am. But she refuses, and so it does just the opposite of what his desire was to happen here, and it ends up costing her. Okay, so then we fast forward, we're in chapter 2, and then it begins to tell us that he's going to have this big event to bring all the women together for him to choose one. But we're introduced to Mordecai. And what's really interesting in Mordecai, it gives us a little background on Mordecai here. It's the first time we hear him is in chapter 2, verse 5. At the time, there was a Jewish man in the fortress of Susa. So he lived in the fortress. Okay, he literally lived there in the palace, whose name was Mordecai, son of Jair, who was from the tribe of Benjamin and was a descendant of Kesh and Shimi. His family had been among those who, with King Joachim of Judah, had been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. So now we have the background history. So this guy here is a Benjamite. Okay, he's a Benjamite. He's from Judah. Okay, a Benjamite from Judah, and he has a cousin that he's taking care of. Okay, whose name is Esther, and she goes in. So now we know who the players are on this side. So before we can make a decision or make any preconceived notions about anything that's going on, we got to know who the players are. So the Bible very clearly is telling us who the players are. Okay,
Yes.
so we know that from the tribe of Benjamin, in the land of Judah. Now, Judah is the lower kingdom. It's the southern kingdom. Israel is the northern kingdom. So at this particular point in time, when he was taken away into Babylon, the northern kingdom was already defeated. So they are the last ones, the last man standing, basically. Judah was the last one standing out of the one. And this is where the term Jewish comes from, or Jew comes from, Yehudi. It doesn't necessarily mean all Jews. It means Jews specifically from the land of Judah. So he's a Yehudi. So Yehudi, or now which we translate to Jew, that means all the Jews because they're one family, but it was meant specifically of a people from a specific land or area. Yehudi, Jew. Okay, that's what we translate to Jew. So this is where the term first comes from, is here in this story. And there's another, I think in the Chronicles or Kings at the end of it, it comes up as that as well, Yehudi. So here we're being introduced to this term. And so now, who is Haman? So let's find out where Haman comes in. So Haman is introduced to us. And so Esther, and then Mordecai also tells Esther not to reveal who she is or where she's from or anything about that. Just be a nameless person and blend in. And so that's what she does for that. So then, where did they go here? I'm trying to find where we're introduced to. We're introduced to Haman.
11th verse.
Yes, here it is, right here. So it's verse 3, chapter 3, verse 1. Sometime later, King Xerxes promotes Haman, son of Hammedat, the Agagite. Now, we got to do a little research. This is where it's very clear where the Bible tells us in Proverbs 25, it's the glory of God to conceal a thing, but it's the glory of the king to go and discover it and find it out. So this is one of those times where we're going to find the mysteries and we're going to dig in and find out what's really going on. So now we're going to dig in. So Agagite. So what does that mean? Well, there was a king named King Agag. And Saul was told by God through Samuel to go and utterly wipe out the Amalekites. So he's an Amalekite king, okay? An Amalekite king that they were told to utterly go in and to destroy. And in destroying them, they're going to do that because they were the first nation that Israel came upon when they came out of Egypt and they attacked them. Okay? And so we have some history here. So there's some animosity between Amalekite and the Jewish people as a whole. Okay? So we're starting to see a little backstory. But if we go further back and find out where the Amalekites come from, we'll learn a whole lot more. Okay? So now, the Amalekites, the Agag, okay, so we have King Agag was the king of the Amalekites. This is a descendant of the king of the Amalekites. Okay, Agag is who Haman is. He comes from Amalek. So who is Amalek? So if we go to Genesis 36, verses 10 and 11, it tells us that Esau had a son named Eliphaz. Eliphaz had a concubine, okay, not a legitimate son, a concubine whose name was Timah, and she had the son Amalek. And so now we have a second citizen son, second class son here from the line of Esau, who has heard his entire life how Jacob stole his birthright, how Jacob took everything that they were supposed to have. And now he has anger, he has resentment. My daddy doesn't accept me. My daddy isn't loving me the way he should because I was with a concubine. I'm not a legitimate son because he's not married to my mother. He's just a concubine. You understand? So there's some issues going. There's some family issues going here. Now we got to go back. If we go back and we read in Genesis chapter 27, we get the blessing that was spoken over Esau. Okay, it picks up in verse 40. And Esau begs his father, says, don't you have just one blessing for me? Anything. Bless. I don't care what it is. Just bless me with something. Give me a blessing. Okay? So finally Isaac said to him, you will live away from the riches of the earth and away from the dew of the heaven above. You will live by the sword and you will serve your brother. Okay? But when you decide to break free, you will shackle his yoke from your neck and be free. And so here we are. So it's a battle that's going on. So just in the words spoken from Jacob, from Isaac to Esau, now he's constantly at war with Israel because it was spoken. We've got to be careful of the words that come out of our mouth.
Yeah.
And so now that we know who our players are, we have this is Esau versus Jacob again. This is Esau's family versus Jacob's family who are fighting and jockeying for position. Okay? Now, the Benjamite is Mordecai and Esther. They're just servants. They're serving the king. They're serving at the king's pleasure. They're doing the things that they're told to do when they're told to do. But all of a sudden, another character comes in named Haman, and Haman is promoted, and in his promotion gets a little high and mighty in himself, and he takes upon himself and tells all the servants of the king in the court to bow before him. Mordecai refuses to bow before him. Okay? He refuses. We have another person, a public figure on stage that refuses to bow to New World Order. Okay? And so here we are having similar things happening today that were happening there. There was someone who's elevated to power, and he's refusing to bow down to something that's not right because it was not brought from the king directly. It was indirectly brought that Haman said that the king said it. No one else heard the king say it, so therefore Mordecai says, no, I want to honor the king, and I'm not going to bow to something unless the king himself said it and I heard him say it. Make sense?
Yeah.
So that's where we are. So that's why he hates hates Mordecai, because he refuses to bow, because he elevated himself to a place of power that the king did not necessarily give him. Okay?
Yeah.
But he took it upon himself to give himself because he's power hungry. Sound like what's going on today in our world. People are power hungry, okay? So again, if you read this book and you read this story and you dive deep down into it, you're going to find out what's really going on. Now let's talk about the hatred that he had, that Haman had for Mordecai. So he is angry with one man. And because of his anger, let me find it here again. They get moved around here. Because of his anger with this one man, okay, he's ready to destroy an entire nation. Okay? Now it tells us that in the month of April, it's the 12th year of King Xerxes' reign, lots were cast in Haman's presence. The lots are called Purim. That's why this holiday is called Purim. When they cast lots, it was called Purim, so it casted a lot to determine the best day and month to take the action, and the day was selected March 7th of that year, nearly a year later. So almost a year, he's put into place a plan to destroy the Jews. And so this is something that's been going on for a long period of time. It wasn't, I decided today we're going to kill the Jews, we're going to go next week and do it. This is something that took a year to process, okay? So the wars and things we're seeing today don't happen overnight. They happen over time. That's what the Lord is showing us. They happen over time. And through that time of things being done behind the scenes that no one is aware of, the wars happen. Okay, so a war is about to break out and happen. So now we've got this going on. All right, so then Haman approaches the king. So there's a certain race of people scattered throughout your province of your empire who keep themselves separate from everyone else. And so now he's separating them out. And he's saying you'll know them because they're separate. They don't interact with other people, okay? Because by their law, they're not supposed to.
Right.
They defile themselves, and they do. All right? Their laws are different from those of other people, and they refuse to obey the laws of the king. So he's got 3 complaints against them. They're different from everybody else. They don't associate with everybody else. Okay? They keep different laws, and they refuse to obey your laws. Okay? So he's got 3 complaints against them. All right? And so if it interests the king, pleases the king, issue a decree that will destroy them, and I will give you 100 large sacks of silver to the government administration administrators to deposit in the royal treasury. So he's offering to pay. So if we actually go and look, he's offering he's offering 10,000 talents, okay, which equals 375 tons of silver. This man hated one man so much that he's willing to give up out of his own treasury $281 million.
Wow.
Do you hate anyone so much that you're willing to give up $281 million over $250 million? Have you ever hated someone that much in your life?
No.
But he hates him. Why does he hate him? Because there was a blessing spoken over him that said that you would serve your brother, and when you got ready, you live by the sword, and when you got ready to be free from him, you'd break the yoke. And so here he is trying to break the yoke. However, it's not the time yet for the yoke to be broken, because he doesn't actually serve. He's actually higher than the brother. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So he's trying to make something happen that's not time yet to happen.
Right.
And so he's willing to give of his own self $281 million, $250 million over, to make the future come to pass quicker than later. Okay? And so here he is. This is what he's doing. Are you following me?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to make sure, okay?
Trying to manipulate God.
He's trying to manipulate the situation, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So he hates him so much, I'm going to give the king this. And the king's like, okay, you're going to give me money? Sure, kill whoever you want to kill. I don't care. I'm indifferent. He doesn't bother him. He doesn't matter to him. So every decision the king has made from this point on seems to be like just, okay, whatever. He's just, okay, we'll just make a quick decision and go with it. Doesn't think anything through, doesn't process anything through, doesn't move forward with the things through thought. He just emotionally goes, okay?
Right.
And so he doesn't think things through. So he's a quick to act person. So then the word gets out, and so all the Jewish people know that they're about to die because they're unable to do anything. So then Mordecai goes to Esther and tells her, and this is the only time God shows up in the Bible, and in this story, because this is the only book in the Bible where God is not a main character. He almost doesn't exist in this story at all. The only reference to it is when Mordecai goes, look, you have to go into the king and you have to do this, and she says, I can't do that. I'll be killed if I go in, because if the scepter's not raised to me, then I take my life in my own hands. He says, well, if you don't do it, then you will lose your life, and God will raise another. It's the only mention to God that happens in the entire book. So God is not even main character. He's a secondary character. It's the only book in the entire 66 books of the Bible where God is not a main character. He's an afterthought, okay? So it's showing us how politics works. And so you can't say that, I'm a Christian and I don't do politics, I don't get involved with it. This story right here is 100% based on politics, based on government, shows how things work, and shows what happens when ungodly people are in power, and what happens when godly people rise up and take a stand. And so that's what's going on, and that's what we're seeing here in this story. Okay, so it goes right along with everything that's going on today in the time and season that we're in. So does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So there we are. So now she's going and presents herself to him, and she goes to the king. She finds favor, and then in finding favor, she goes into him and just says, he offers her at that point in time when she goes in, I offer you half of my kingdom. Okay, anything you want. He's so happy to see her. He hadn't seen her in 30 days. Hadn't thought about her, didn't he? But he sees her, and now all of a sudden his heart just melts towards her and goes, anything you desire, Esther, up to half my kingdom. She could have asked for it right there. She could have ended the whole thing right there, but no, what does she do? She invites him and his right-hand man Haman to a banquet. Okay, well, that's weird, but okay, you're going to invite me to a banquet and them? Okay. So she's starting to plant this seed of, is something going on between Esther and Haman I don't know about? So she's starting to plant the seeds of Haman going after her or pursuing her in some fashion or form. So the king goes and has the meeting with them, and says, okay, now, Esther, tell me what it is you really desire. We're here. Which is, if it pleases again, let me set up another banquet and let you two come again tomorrow. And so now he's starting to go, what's going on? Because something strange is happening here. His mind begins to wander. He's unable to sleep. And being unable to sleep, he then calls for one of his servants to read to him the chronicles of the days and time, what's going on. And the story of Mordecai just so happens to be the thing that's read about how Mordecai saved his life earlier. And so as Mordecai saves his life and finds out what's going on, he goes, well, he desires to honor them. Now at the same time as Haman leaves this great banquet that was put on by Esther for him and the king, Mordecai, he's on cloud 9. Mordecai's there and doesn't bow to him, and he goes from cloud 9 to just total anger and rage. He goes to his family, goes to his wife, goes to his leader friends and all his people he confides in, and says, oh, this great thing happened, but it's nothing because this Jew refuses to bow before me. Okay? He refuses to show me the honor that I'm due. And so what did they tell him to do? They said, set up a gallows 75 feet high and then go to the king and ask him if you can cut his head off. And he agrees to that. So he goes in the middle of the night. The king already can't sleep, already kind of got questions going on about what's going on with this situation with Haman. So he goes to ask him if he can do this, and the king hears him outside, says, hi, Haman. He comes in. As he comes in, he tries to tell him what he says, but whoa, tell me what should I do, the king says, for a man the king desires to honor. Haman, thinking about himself, all right, this is my opportunity. He needs a horse that the king has rode on. He needs clothes the king has worn. He needs the king's crown and everything so that he can begin to see how great and everything I am, the Lord, that the king has blessed me so that I look like the king. So now if the king didn't already have issues with Haman, now Haman's only making it worse, saying about the things the king should do to honor who he thinks is him. And then so he goes, okay, great. Now everything you said, go do it to the Jew Mordecai. And you can just see his face. I mean, just imagine his face just dropped. He's, I'm coming to ask you to chop this guy's head off, and now you're going to give him the honor that I thought you were going to give me. That's just, God has a sense of humor. He's not in the story, but he's got a sense of humor in telling the story. So as this is going on, he has to go on parade. The very Jew that he hates and despises and offered $280 million of his own money to kill him and his entire nation of people, he's got to parade him around and make a big deal out of him. I mean, talk about a slap in the face, okay?
That's wonderful.
So this is happening. So now as this is happening, okay, he gets even more angry, and the day is getting closer, okay? So then they have the next banquet, okay? And then she comes clean and she tells him what's going on, but her language is really strange in what she says and how she says it. It makes no sense. She pleads for her life because someone's trying to kill me. Well, who's trying to kill you? Well, why would you plead for your life? Well, why are you doing this? And how are you doing this? And if we actually go back and read what she says, and the first time here, she's telling the story of what happened between Judah and Benjamin. Mm-hmm. Okay? She's going back and telling the story, or actually Joseph, the first son. She's going and telling the story about how Judah said, let's sell Joseph and not have his blood on our hands. She actually repeats the story. The words are taken in the Hebrew word for word. She's literally lifting from Genesis the sale of Joseph, and she's putting in here, if you would have just sold us, I wouldn't have even said a word. I wouldn't have cared. If you would have, but you're threatening to kill us, and if you sell us, we're of no value to you because you can't even make money on us if we're dead. So she's pleading, and the king walks out. He has to go and think about it. So she's left alone with Haman, and as she's left alone with Haman just sees that, oh my God, I can't believe that I'm responsible for killing the queen, and just the emotions that he literally lays his head down on her lap on the sofa that she's at, and then the king comes in and then thinks he's trying to pursue her, and says, "Is it not enough that you try to get my kingdom? Now you try to take my wife too?" Well, again, he goes back to his instantaneous not thinking about things and immediately acting on them, and he has Haman killed by the very gallows he set up to kill Haman. But that's not the end of the story.
So where that is today.
So where specifically that is today? Well, we're seeing well, I'd say today I watched on the news today, and they're showing footage and they're showing things that may or may not be true. They're showing footage that this is happening and that is happening, and we don't know what's really going on because we're not over there. And so now here the king doesn't know what's really going on, but can be led one where he was manipulated to think that these people were against him when they really weren't against him because of propaganda and the things that Haman said. And now we have the other side of the story coming forth, and he immediately assumes something that's not necessarily true. He's actually trying to kill her, unrealized that he's trying to kill her. Unbeknownst to him, he's trying to kill her because of her nationality. And no particular point in time ever did Esther ever reveal that she was a Jew. It's not until this very moment. And why did she not do that? Because there's 127 providences. She's the queen of all providences. She does not have the luxury to be a Jewish person, or to be an Ethiopian, or to be a Babylonian, or any other nation. She is the queen of Persia. And so with her not having a nationality or associated with any group of people, she truly is what Xerxes desires, the queen of all the people. Okay? But now she's having to put herself in the position to go, I choose one people over another. And that's going to offend and upset the king. And so how does she do that? She makes it look like there's a love triangle going on here, situation, and manipulates the situation so that Haman is the one that gets the punishment for the situation.
Yes.
So this happens here. So now Haman's gone, but the problem's not fixed. We still have the same problem. The Jews are still going to die because there's a date set for them to all be murdered.
And you can't take it
And
back.
it cannot be changed because of the law. So she goes before king again. He lifts his scepter to her and says, hey, can you strike this from the books? Can you do so? He explains to her, no, once it's spoken out from the king, it's a decree. It cannot be changed. It's a law. Now he says, take my ring, go, and you write whatever you like to combat against it, but you cannot take it off the books. You can't strike it. And it's the same thing for us, particularly in the time and season we're in now. When we speak something and decree it out of our mouth, it's law. It manifests. It has power. We're now called kings and priests. So now as a king and priest, whatever comes out of our mouth today has more power than it's ever had in history in the decade, time, and season that we're in now. So be very, very careful of the things that you speak. Be very careful of the words that come out of your mouth, because you're building your future with the words that come out of your mouth today.
Yes.
And so their future was sealed. So what do? They take the king's ring, and they take this stuff, and they write something. Now the Jews are able to defend themselves. I think the day before, or the day of, or the day before, they're able to go and now defend themselves. And now as they're able to defend themselves, they actually take out anyone and everyone that would ever try to harm them. So they've set themselves up in a good place. But how did they put fear into all the people to where they would not attack the Jews? Mordecai had to do the very thing that he despised Haman for. He had to go and put on the king's robe and ride the king's horse and wear the king's crown and ride through the provinces and show that the king has favoritism, whether he did or not, but he made it look like, again, a form of propaganda, that he had favoritism towards the Jews. So the people as a whole did not rise up against them, only those that truly hated them.
Yeah.
Yet God does not show up one time in this story, but godly people do. Now, you may not see God as a main character in your story, okay? Because there's so many of us that have not heard the audible voice of God, or not seen miracles of the Red Sea opening and different things in our lives, but we are good, godly people. It is our job to stand up and say no. It is our job to be elected as officials, and our job to get on the school boards, and our job to get on the city council, and our job to stand up and say no. This is not right. God didn't intervene or do anything in this story, but he had two people set up that did it because they knew who their God was. And that's what he's telling us to do today. Get the whole story. Get the backstory. There's a lot of backstory to what's going on today on the other side of the world. A lot of backstory. You can't go by what they're telling you right now on the news and the sad pictures and the things going on. It's horrible what's going on over there. But get the backstory and pray according to the backstory, that it'll be revealed, and then God will get the glory.
So good, isn't it?
That's good.
And we're in that time of Purim.
Yes.
And the Jewish people celebrate it by putting costumes on. And then they have the Haman, and they chase after the Haman.
With the stick.
With the stick.
Beat it.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. This is something I think kind of goes. But you are snared by the words of your mouth. Mm-hmm. You are taken by the words of your mouth. Mm-hmm. And we have to be careful the words we speak, that they are of God. Don't speak things that are not right.
Another thing too, specifically with Haman and the king, don't let other people put words in your mouth.
Yes.
Haman is the one that had the problem. Haman's the one that created the decree, but it was through through the king's mouth and his power and authority, that's it came to pass. So don't let the media put the words in your mouth.
Right.
Don't let anyone put words in your mouth. Make sure the words that come out of your mouth line up with what the Word of God says.
Yeah, because it's in Proverbs 6. It's good to read that whole thing in Proverbs 6 because it goes on and it says everything about your words, but it really goes along with what you're talking about today.